I'm joined now by Governor Newsom. Thanks for joining me today.
It's good to be with you.
So we are at the Los Angeles Regional Food Bank. We're going to talk about that in a few moments. The people who are working here are doing God's work, delivering very much needed help to the people of Los Angeles who are impacted by these fires. More broadly, though, the people of California need federal help. And so what will the federal aid that Biden released be able to do for us? And do you have any worry more broadly that in a few days when Trump is sworn into office that he'll be able to intervene?
Yeah, so there were two, on the first part of your question, two things President Biden did right away. And I mean right away. We got a major disaster declaration within 36 hours. That's unprecedented in modern emergency history. We got it over a text message. I asked the president just on the immediate disaster response to move from a 75% reimbursement from FEMA to a 90%. He said no. I said, geez, Mr. President, he said, no, I'm gonna do 100%. He stepped up and he continues to, including just a few hours ago with what they call these C-to-G grants. It was the last major part. What the C-to-G grants mean is playgrounds, parks, and schools and community centers getting that 100% reimbursed. So significant support. FEMA now is out there on the line doing $770 debit cards just for incidentals, groceries.
And those are immediate.
Immediate.
That doesn't mean that all these people are getting a $700.
But that's just immediate before you even get to the application to get up to $43,600. Go to disasterassistance.gov. Look, all of that said, what you did frame is what happens next week, what could happen into the future, and that's to be determined. We're trying to button everything up we possibly can, including today, quite literally a few minutes before I got here, I saw an executive order allowing the US EPA to come in with their hazmat team. So already phase one of the debris removal has begun, and we're trying to now lock in phase two, which is the master debris removal contract, and then get federal support, again, all in anticipation of what could occur next week.
Can I have your reaction to Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, coming out in support of establishing the precedent of conditioning disaster relief, and him doing it from the state of Louisiana? Like it's not like this guy is any stranger to what would happen if we start playing politics with disaster relief. So can I have your reaction to that?
I hope it looks in his heart. The pain and suffering of the American people, the trauma that everybody's experiencing in his country. He's the Speaker of the House of Representatives for the United States of America, one nation under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all, not some who may have a political point of view. By the way, I didn't ask anyone what their political affiliation was when we're down here working to try to protect people in the community from the ravages of these fires and these unprecedented winds. But you know what? Nor did we ever, never in California questioned whether or not we as taxpayers in the largest state in the union should support the people of Louisiana at a time of emergency and need. We never conditioned it. We never talked about putting the full fate and credit of the United States of America with the debt ceiling bill so we can get tax cuts for billionaires and corporations that don't need it, and then put at risk the lives of hundreds of thousands of Americans that happen to live in California.
And this, by the way, is California as a donor state, as arguably the biggest donor state in the country.
Yeah, size of 21 state populations combined. A state with millions and millions of Trump supporters, Speaker Johnson and Mr. President-elect. Millions of your supporters are out here. They need your help. They need your empathy. They need your care, whatever compassion you can express, as opposed to condemnation and divisive language that has aided and embedded nothing except mis and disinformation that's flamed fear and flamed a lot of anxiety for folks that are simply trying to recover and at the same time our first responders trying to address the emergency at hand, which still hasn't been fully buttoned up.
As far as the disinformation efforts go, we have seen that from Mike Johnson, from Trump, from others in the Republican Party. How much of an impediment to your job is contending with disinformation when you should be focused on more important things? Anything else other than that?
At first, the mindset, I'm putting my head down, that's just noise. And then I started realizing with my head down, I'm out in the community, people are reflecting stuff that made no sense. I said, why didn't you send us water? There's no state water. Why do you care about the smell? I said, what are you talking about? And I started to realize this information is impacting people's lives, is actually impacting their ability to trust and reason. And so we started to push back. And yeah, we've had to spend a lot of time putting a fact site up that every couple minutes we're just having to update. I mean, people, there are people that have millions and millions of views that talk about the fact that somehow this was an intentional fire in order to get rid of tunnels because Donald Trump was going to prosecute everybody out here for pedophile rings. And it got millions of views. And there are actually people out there, reasonable people, God bless them, that are misinformed and start to believe this crap. And so we have to push back. And look, to be in the middle of this, to deal with hurricane force winds that attach to a fire, at the same time we're dealing with hurricane force misinformation and intentional disinformation, not just by the President of the United States, but guys like Elon Musk that will platform all this bullshit as well. And forgive my language, that's what it is.
To that point then, I mean, this is somebody who bought up Twitter to be able to have a bigger platform, to reach the majority of the people in this country. And for example, one of the things that he brought up was this idea that looting is decriminalized in California. And so not only is that false information that people are gonna consume,
just an outright lie. Keep going.
Not only a lie, but it also gives something of a permission structure for people who want to do it to then think, oh, well, I heard from Elon Musk, who has the biggest platform on the biggest voice on this platform, that it's okay.
Yeah, so the asymmetry of that is off the charts. In an emergency situation, it's something that shouldn't happen. That said, back to just noise, push back, take some of that seriously. But the literal responsibility we have is the task at hand. We have 8,400 firefighters as I speak working the line, 16,000 personnel, 2,500 National Guard trying to address the issue of looting, 750 CHP as we speak. We have the EPA starting to do phase 1 and the debris removal. We're doing individual home inspections and we're working through that in record time so we can get people back on their feet. We're addressing the insurance crisis, just met with all the CEOs around the insurance issues, and we're addressing temporary housing, we're addressing temporary food needs, emergency assistance, and we want to give people hope that feel helpless, and all of that is a deep distraction. And it is what it is. It's the world we're living in. We can't deny it. It's not what happens. It's our response to what happens. And our response is to focus on the mission at hand, helping people in need.
Well, for posterity, while I have you, I do want to try to push back on some of that disinformation and give you the opportunity to introduce some positive information into the zeitgeist here. So can you just give some of that accurate information as it relates to prioritizing smelt, as it relates to this idea that there is a spigot that can be turned on from NorCal down to SoCal, on this idea that there's not enough water here in Los Angeles?
So let's start with it. Well, I'll go backwards. We have above average, near record water stored in Southern California. We have no spigot that we can go and move as he keeps. I mean, I think he actually believes it. Yeah. Because I've been hearing this for 6 or 7 years. He talked about a non-existent act that somehow I've literally made up. Yeah. There's not a human being that understands what he's talking about.
That right next to Michigan Man of the Year is...
Yeah, I mean, and the smell, what that has to do with the issues down here, nothing. It's nonsense. This notion of forest management. I have literally doubled the number of prescribed burns in the last year. 700,000 acres we treated. We have 10x the budget on an annual basis since I became governor of California. It was $200 million a year. I took the $200 million and we spent an additional $2.5 billion. A week before this fire, we announced an additional $1.5 billion for vegetation management and forest management. We have a memorandum of understanding with the U.S. Forest Service that has 50% of the land, California just 3% of the land. We don't care about jurisdiction, we care about partnership, and we've advanced unprecedented partnership, doubled the size of our state fire force. We increased by 16 new helicopters, the size of our aerial fleet, which is the largest civilian air fleet in the world. And we pre-positioned 120 engines. We met on Saturday before the Tuesday event. We got folks down here at 6 p.m. on Sunday. We pre-positioned 120 engines. We pulled them from Northern California in anticipation of this wind event. Water tenders, helicopters, hand crews, including the National Guard that were there within minutes of the fire. I had the opportunity to be here within a few hours. I intimately am aware of the winds because we went up the canyon and we had to drive back, immediately thrown back into the car, embers in the hair, because we had hurricane force winds. And these guys, even with a finest water system in the history of mankind. They were literally trying to push the embers down to create evacuation corridors to keep people alive. 99-mile-an-hour winds, the heroism of these folks. I saw it. Sheriff's deputies, police deputies, paramedics, the whole crew, the mutual aid system that was at hand, and the mutual aid system that's expanded from now 12 states and 2 countries as well. So I just have deep pride for these guys. 1,000+ that were on the line fighting those fires, and it did heroic work, did the best they could possibly do.
Look, there is those investments and all of the preparation that was taken into account in the lead up to these fires actually exploding onto the scene. But then obviously there is the mass destruction that followed. And so I know there are going to be folks who look at that and say, well, it wasn't enough because look at we're looking at 40,000 acres burned. Yeah. And so what's your reaction to the disparity that's on display right now in terms of, you know, the preparation and the investment that California's made versus the reality of the situation, which is that there was so much destruction regardless.
Yeah, no, I mean, this was we had what we call PDS. We've had 4 of them, 2 in the last 4 years. We've had 4 of them in the last 3 months. And these are unprecedented wind events, or at least with little precedent wind events that are beyond a red flag warning. 100-mile-an-hour winds with the driest conditions we've had since 1850 in Southern California. Yeah. Structure-to-structure fires, overwhelming everything, unimaginable destruction. And by the way, it's also destruction that's devastatingly and tragically familiar with other major disasters we've seen in Maui. Right. We saw the Camp Fire in Paradise, California, 18,000 structures, 85 people that lost their lives there. Mother Nature's fury, wind and fires and unprecedented strains in a complex, in a theater where we were at peak 7 fires that we were actively addressing around the same time.
I want to talk about insurance for a moment. In the last few years, I think since 2019, about 100 Californians have, or 100,000 Californians have lost access to their insurance. Insurers will no longer insure the properties here in California. So what can we do to prevent even more Californians from losing their insurance in the aftermath of what we're seeing right now?
So there's a moratorium for a minimum of a year. We're trying to get that extended, but already locked down, moratorium. No one can have their policies canceled for at least the next year. That's the immediate number one. Number two, I signed an executive order about 18 months ago. We went through a process with the insurance commissioner that is substantially improving and stabilizing the market. Don't take my word for it. I'll give you a proof point. And this one is ironic and tragic at the same time. A week ago in Paradise, California, one of the major insurers said we are re-entering the market because of the reforms that have taken place in the last year in California. Their words, not mine, into Paradise as people were repopulating that area, point of optimism, and kids were back in schools. The market farmers saying we're now going to stabilize and start writing policies again. So we were finally moving in that direction. Obviously, that's why I met with all the CEOs yesterday and the insurance commissioner. And we're working to do everything we can to hold the line with the existing policyholders, focus on the renewals, make sure there's no one that's dropped in the fire zone with the moratorium in hand, and then look to stabilize that market by continuing to advance the reforms that are underway.
After the moratorium, I mean, this is in a sense a Band-Aid, because beyond that, you know, it's anybody's guess what's going to happen. Is there some incentive that's being put forward to prevent insurers from dropping folks right the day after the moratorium's lifted?
Well, I wish I could show you my notes. 8 CEOs that we had active conversations, 24 that participated, 8 that participated, all said the same thing. The reforms that have taken place, that are underway, allow us more confidence of our ability not only to weather this loss, but to address the medium and longer term challenges in California. So we are on a pathway. The challenge is dealing situationally, not just with the major insurers, but also the FAIR plan, which is not a state plan, it's a syndicate pool, and the exposure there that's being determined in real time. We'll have more clarity on that in just a couple of days. Look, we've got the housing inspectors out there. They're doing what they call these DINS teams. That's the first step. Once the DIN process is over, we get the hazmat folks out there, you get the insurance adjusters out there. People will decide on the debris if they individually want to do all that themselves because they're insured. If they don't want to do it and they're insured, FEMA, through the process that we'll announce very shortly, we'll have a larger contract for the debris removal. And then we've already waived all these CEQA rules, all the Coastal Act rules. We have already fast-tracked the permitting on the rebuilds. We're looking at all kinds of other temporary housing EOs that we're advancing, price gouging, which we're extending, addressing the issue of price gouging, extending the prohibition against price gouging for renters. And we have to now focus on enforcement in a lot of these categories after we establish the new sets of rules and regulations.
So we're in Los Angeles. The lifeblood of this city is the entertainment industry. Already the industry is on life support. I mean, I can't tell you how many of my personal friends, all of my whole circle of friends is all in the entertainment industry. I can't tell you how many of them have had to go to not only different cities, but different states or even different countries to be able to continue working in the industry that they are here to work in. So already this is on life support. So what's being done right now to kind of bolster the industry at a time where very clearly the city needs it more than ever?
Well, I just announced just a month or so ago, doubling the film tax credit.
It's $750 million.
Doubling it now, getting ahead of New York. And it was, we thought, a shot in the arm, a lot of energy around that. We're moving it in the budget. It is in my budget. We are working right now more situationally. Got to give Netflix and others credit. They reached out immediately to talk about specific needs for folks within the industry. And so we're targeting that from a situational perspective in terms of the emergency response. But the sustainable framework is the significant investments the state wants to make to stabilize our competitiveness vis-a-vis these tax credits.
And what's your message to the industry more broadly, the studios and the networks, in terms of keeping work here in California, well, now, especially again, given what's happened, given how much the people of Los Angeles need it?
So we announced a couple of days ago this Marshall Plan. We've already organized a framework for an economic and workforce development strategy, the likes of which we'd never seen in this region's history. I already augmented our special session to get $2.5 billion of investments, $1 billion of flexible investments down here as quickly as possible, down payment to help all of the above. But as it relates to our larger effort around production, this is the time, this is the opportunity for those studios to bring back these productions, to reinvest in their home state. And I think that has got to be a big part of this economic strategy, this larger Marshall Plan. And that's an opportunity for this industry to help itself to create a virtual cycle. Look, we're going to come out of this smarter, more flexible, more creative across the spectrum, not just from an entertainment framework of creativity, building designs, building constructions, ingress, egress, vegetation, forest management, more broadly defined beyond. And remember, this is chaparral and grass. No large forests right there on the edge of Palisades. Most of that was more traditional chaparral. But we, in terms of all of those approaches, redundancy systems, life safety systems, all of that is all being collapsed in a new consciousness and integrated in a new relationship of mutuality between the city, the county, the state, and we hope, to your opening question, the federal government.
So I know that a lot of the red tape is being cast aside in deference to getting this process moving quicker, getting everything rebuilt quicker. With that said, a lot of the problems stem from the fact that we didn't have an infrastructure that was able to withstand the reality, the climate reality that we're living in right now. So in addition to being able to waive some of the red tape, is there also going to be some new rules put in place that would actually harden our infrastructure in anticipation of the next fire?
Well, it's exactly what needs to happen. When I remember my mayor days, we did the redundancy as it relates to investments on a major earthquake, a major disaster related to earthquakes, and providing that redundancy. Local governments 480, you've got 58 counties, you've got hundreds and hundreds of cities. All these local governments need to take heed to these new realities, the new extremes. Hot's getting hotter, dry's getting drier, the atmospheric rivers. And yes, we have geologists and hydrologists on the scene right now in anticipation of mud flows, which could be overwhelming if the rains come too soon. And so we're trying to pre-position sandbags. I'll be part of the Guard's work as well. And a lot of the volunteers you see here will also be asked to do work in that respect. So yes, we have to be more climate resilient. We've been preaching this forever.
Yeah.
No state does more in investments at scale. We just did a $10 billion climate bond, which has resources to be more resourceful and resilient. We lead in terms of our low carbon green growth strategies, changing the way we produce and consume energy. We've led the nation going back to Ronald Reagan, mindful as well that Donald Trump is going to try to vandalize those rules and regulations. And so we're going to have to battle on multiple fronts, again, head down. What's noise is noise, what's real is real, but we'll just focus on continuing to make progress, but with the urgency of what this moment represents and a recognition of what we're up against, not just Donald Trump, but Mother Nature herself.
Well, to that point, the issue of climate has been conspicuously absent in most of the coverage of all of this. And so what's your message more broadly in light of not only what we're seeing right now, which is the worst fire that LA City has ever contended with, but I mean, this is happening at the same time that Texas is dealing with hurricanes, that the Midwest is dealing with droughts, that, I mean, look, I lived in New Jersey when Sandy hit, as if we had any schema for what it looks like when a hurricane hits the state of New Jersey and lower Manhattan underwater. And so more broadly speaking, can you just speak on the importance of actually leaning in to the fight to combat climate change as opposed to moving away from it?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take a backseat to no one, and my passion in this space and the policies that we've been advancing in addressing the root cause, which is the burning of coal, natural gas, and oil. It's not complicated. And that's why we've been very aggressive on fossil fuels and addressing issues related to the mis and disinformation. You want to talk about mis and disinformation that has been coming for decades from the oil interests in the fossil fuel industry. And that's why we initiated a lawsuit. That's why we initiated 2 special sessions around price gouging in that space and advanced new oversight and transparency measures in California. At the same time, our nation-leading cap and trade program, low carbon fuel standards program, our unprecedented investments as it relates to equity and environmental justice in new technologies and carbon capture and direct air capture. We've been advancing investments that are next level on infrastructure. More than a quarter of all the new vehicles in California are electric vehicles or alternative fuel vehicles, hybrids. And so we want to maintain that leadership because that's how we dominate the future. It's how we compete against China. It's how we compete in a world that's moving in this direction. We're going to obviously have setbacks, as we've seen before with the Trump administration, but we're going to try to persist and prevail. And again, all of this at the same time and more at the same time, stacking stress, but also stacking of a consciousness of optimism and opportunity that this also provides. Change how we do permitting for housing, period. We've been fighting this for decades. Enough. It's the original sin in California on affordability. And so there's, I think, a new consciousness in the legislature that we're now at a point where I think we're going to see some of these temporary rules be established with no flexibility as more permanent rules where we can come out of this again, like the flag of San Francisco, the Phoenix rising, come back stronger than we ever have. And again, I say that mindful that when I was standing there in the ashes with then President Donald Trump as governor-elect in Paradise, California, few people thought they would ever recover and people would ever repopulate. And their proof point, hardly full population return, but it's making progress. You see that progress demonstrably so. And that gives us, I think, optimism, the Tubbs fire, the recovery there, optimism that you're going to see this community thrive, not just survive, as long as we protect them from speculators, people that are doing unsolicited offers. I did an executive order there. And if we see the sort of, and I don't mean to malign some of the BlackRock, whatever, it's not about anyone that wants to organize a way to gut a community like Altadena, which is a middle-class, disproportionately Black and brown community where generational wealth has been created from the 20s and 30s and 40s. We're going to go after them, and that's the mindset we have moving forward.
So we are in the Los Angeles Regional Food Kitchen right now. Talk about the significance of this place in light of what's happened.
Well, I mean, diapers for kids, diapers for seniors, need to get prepared meals because people don't have stoves, don't have access to their kitchen utensils. To see these kids, that's inspiring. We have the largest volunteer corps in the United States of America. It's larger than the Peace Corps. It's a point of real pride. I think the solution to so many of our problems, it comes from service, shared experiences. And so we have Climate Corps members in the spirit of the conversation, quite literally, that were reassigned and are now here at the food bank. We have College Corps members, 450 hours, $10,000 grants. It's the largest, it's the only College Corps of its type in this country. They're out here helping folks in need. That's the spirit that defines, I think, the best of our state and our nation. It's the spirit I hope that Donald Trump could bring to this tragedy, not the one that he's brought to the first week of this experience.
And finally, I know that there are a lot of people who are watching, listening right now, who want to know how they can best help. What would you say to them?
I just think the most important thing you can do is, if you want to contribute time, do the kind of volunteer work that folks are doing here at the food banks and Red Cross, et cetera. But if you want to contribute money, the Latino Community Foundation will play a critical role in this context. A lot of people, mixed status families, 39% of the state is Latino. A lot of people here that are documented, many that are not documented. FEMA grants do not provide that support for people without documentation. Latino Community Foundation provides a lot of that gap funding. The California Community Foundation, and then the Fire Foundation, where we are directing a lot of our resources. And that's just an extraordinary organization, no overhead on that. And the money is very thoughtfully invested. I think those are three great organizations where you can contribute $1 to. If you've got more, that would be great as well.
Well, I'll put the links to all of those organizations in the show notes of this episode and the post description of this episode. Governor Newsom, thanks for taking the time.
Thank you for being out, particularly being here at the food bank and highlighting the incredible work that's being done out there.